Today we're going to check out a mechanical keyboard that I spotted online, and this is one of the cheapest ones I've ever seen at only around $30 on eBay and not some foreign website you have to mess around with. And this is just the ridiculous price for a mechanical keyboard, so it's about 2 to 4 times cheaper than most others. So this is the React-Hace DK87 gaming mechanical keyboard from this Chinese company here, which is a part of the reason why it's so cheap. And I actually have 2 of these, and as you can probably guess, I have a black version and a white version. Interestingly, when I ordered these, which was at the exact same time in the same order, they sent them separately, so one of them came like a week after, which was annoying, so just consider that. And yeah, it's from China, so it will take about 3 to 5 weeks to reach you. So the boxes are actually quite nice, and it shows a bunch of its features and a bunch of pictures, but with limited English on them. It also shows that it apparently comes with 4 key switches. However, from what I saw on eBay, there's only the black key switch, which is generally the least desirable, but still awesome of course. Inside the box is just the keyboard itself and some documentation that I can't read, so pretty bare bones, and the white version is the exact same thing. And here it is in all its awesome simpleness. I see so many cheap keyboards from China, but they often look weird and flashy, and heaps of them have that gamery look that's tiring to look at. But this caught my eye straight away with its standard everything. First of all, it's a 10 keyless keyboard, hence the name DK87 for 87 keys, which is cool if you don't need the numpad. And size wise, it's just a tad smaller in comparison to my old DuckyShine 3, since the plastic top shell has slightly thinner borders around it on the DK87. Also, it's a bit more slimmer, with it sitting a bit more lower with a slimmer bottom shell. However, the one stain on the board in my opinion is that logo. It's in plain sight and there's no hiding it unless you paint over it, which I may do on the black version. The labeling is quite large, and this is unfortunate that many Chinese manufacturers label in this location. I would so much prefer the labeling to be on the sides or the rear edges of the keyboard, like seen on something like this CM Storm keyboard. So both of these boards are pretty simple, and I must say it really does look awesome in white. However, the characters on the keycaps are in orange. The images of the keyboard do kind of seem like it is a backlit keyboard in orange of course. The Kogan mechanical keyboard that I reviewed a while back does have very similar looking keycaps, and that was backlit as well, so I was assuming this would be as well. And that would have been a steal at this price, and also to get white backlit keycaps at this price would be amazing. However, it is not backlit, but that's just fine. Also, the metal backplate that the key switches are mounted to is orange as well, so it kind of gives that underglow effect and gives that assumption that it is backlit. The shell is plastic as said, which is the case for most keyboards, so that's not a problem. On the top surface it has a clean satin finish, however on the sides it's a more glossy plastic. But it's kind of different in that it's not too glossy, so fingerprints aren't as apparent. It also doesn't give a clean reflection, so it kind of seems diffused, so this actually worked for the best. Taking off the keycaps, we come to the main reason why this keyboard is just so cheap. And this was the biggest surprise to me. It wasn't really specific in the product description, so I assumed they were going to be using some other more common clone of the Cherry MX key switches, like many of the other keyboards on sale, but they were actually their own branded React-Hace key switches. Now these are clones of the famous German-made Cherry MX key switches, so they look almost identical in every way, like most clones do, and since they're using the same color coding system that Cherry does, we can expect the feel of the key switches to be very similar. And yep, they do feel very similar. Since these are black, these are the equivalent to the Cherry MX blacks, which have an actuation force required of 60 centinewtons, which is approximately 60 gram force. These are linear key switches and are the heaviest of the 4 common key switches, so these go straight down and have no tactile bump or click upon actuation. I personally feel that these are too heavy, but these are just basically the red key switches, which are said to be the best for gaming, but just 15 grams heavier. And for gaming, they feel fine. It will give you that mechanical linear experience that you expect, and you don't have to bottom out the keys to actuate it just like on the other Switches, so you can get lightning quick actions and repetition. For typing, it's the same deal. It will be great for heavy touch typists who like to really mash down on their keyboards and don't want that loud audible click that will annoy anyone around you. But we already knew all this since it basically has all the characteristics of the Cherry MX Blacks. What we don't know is the degree of the quality the key switches have. Obviously for durability, only time will tell on how long these will last, so that may take months to a couple of years to figure out, so nothing much can be done there. As for variances in how they feel, between these two keyboards they feel the same, but that's to be expected since they're probably from the same batch of key switches that were manufactured. But what we can say is that they feel like the Cherry MX Blacks, perform like them, sound like them, and overall will give you 99% of the same experience as the Cherry MX Black key switches will give you. And here's a quick sound test. Looking at the keycaps themselves, they're ABS plastic keycaps, so they're not PBT or anything special, and they're quite thin but not breaking thin, and since there's orange characters, these are actually double shot keycaps, so there's the two plastic moldings merged together as one, so there won't be any fading or anything that printing characters can do. So this is actually quite a nice inclusion, and buying this keyboard for just the extra keycaps themselves actually might be a reasonable purchase, and you actually get the keyboard as well. Now the disassembly wasn't too difficult. It was a bit different to normal, but it's pretty much the same job of removing a few screws and releasing some plastic tabs. Here's the plastic bottom shell, and it's pretty thin as said before, but it has a reasonable amount of ribbing on the bottom surface for reinforcement and making the shell more sturdy. The screw bosses are also reasonably enforced. And if you can see this does confirm that it's ABS plastic. The top shell is pretty much the same with a touch of reinforcing here and there, and just 3 large tabs to hold the PCB down. And here's the main part. We have the black PCB on the bottom, which has all the key switches mounted to it, with the orange metal backplate wedged in the middle. So since these are plate mounted key switches, for any repairs or replacement of the key switches, you would have to desolder them and resolder them like I did here. The soldering and PCB overall actually looks pretty neat and clean for a Chinese board like this, which is really nice to see. Alright, so since I have 2 versions of this keyboard, I realized that I could swap out the keycaps to make it a bit more interesting and actually get a bit more value out of the keyboards. I actually tried a few different configurations to see what was best, and I always felt like the white shell version looked perfect every time, but I couldn't quite get the black version to look good. One thing that probably contributed to this was the extreme contrast of the colors. So the white keycaps on the black keyboard in particular look kinda too isolated, especially in the function row, where F5 to F8 were. But in the end, I stopped with this configuration, where majority of the keycaps are the same color as the shell, and the modifiers and the others were the opposite color, so it's more of an accent color, being less harsh on the contrast front. So in conclusion, this board, despite looking boring at first, held quite a couple of surprises. The key switches will give you that undeniable mechanical experience, however the durability and quality is yet to be determined and may be a risk. The looks and design of the keyboard however are on point, besides that stain of a logo above the directional keys. However, this would make an awesome keyboard to experiment on with spray paint in different colors, since it's such a low price. And that really is the main point. It's just super cheap for what you get, and in my opinion it's worth the risk at such a low price, perhaps even enough to get to.